Hey guys and dolls. Before we jump into this episode, a note about our content today. This is created for adult audiences only. We advise listener discretion. So if you need a breather, take a break and come back later. This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. Everyone has heard about the value of journaling and writing to help us heal from anything. But in our case here on this show, it's a lot of trauma and abuse, emotional challenges and anxiety and insomnia and eating disorders. And that's just talking about me. But how many of us actually leverage such a beautiful and worthwhile tool such as writing? And you don't have to be a good writer to write it out either. And I was a creative writing and an opera major and have been working on a book myself and some music as well. And the process is so incredibly cathartic and incredibly healing. And when I write and I sing, I am working on some dark and twisty and broken places that I still am trying to fix, and some of them, quite frankly, I'm kind of uncovering the damage of a lifetime of abuse and trauma. And sometimes I'm worried about a suppressed memory that's lurking below that I don't remember popping up on me, right? But I definitely always feel better after I put pen to paper. And I think you will as well. So let's talk about it, and let's talk about exercising some of our traumas and abuse and some of the icky things that we've been through in our lives through the act of writing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my guest today, Cassie Gustafson. Hello, darling.
Hello.
Hello. Cassie is the author of 2 YA contemporary novels, After the Ink Dries and The Secrets We Keep. Both are from Simon & Schuster, and both are #1 Amazon bestsellers. And the covers of them are stupid beautiful too. So Cassie lives on the New England seacoast of the United States with her pilot husband, and she also has a very talkative cat who may or may not be joining us on this episode today. We don't know. She earned an MA in English literature and an MFA in writing for young adults. All right, I'm going to roll out the red carpet for you, babe. And I'd like to start talking about how you took the healing power of writing when trauma and illness kind of took over your life. And let's start with our favorite topic here, trauma and abuse, and talk to us a little bit about what happened to you at a high level, and then let's take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks so much for having me.
Sure, of course.
It's such an honor to be here. I think my abuse started when I was young, and I was abused by somebody that I knew and loved. And so I think that sets up your body in a lot of ways to fail.
Yeah.
And so from there into college, I think you would be hard pressed to find a woman who was not assaulted. But, we try to get ourselves out of these trauma cycles, especially when they've been ingrained in us since such a young age. And we don't have the tools to get ourselves out. So we just find ourselves in the same situations. So that was my story. And you are absolutely right. You do not need to be a good writer, especially when you're starting. Mine started out with a lot of angsty, terrible poetry. But I think it was a really important place to start because you just need to get all of the feels that are inside of your body outside.
Yeah.
And if that helps in your healing journey in any way, then it's not only, cathartic, it's very important.
It is definitely important.
Yeah. So it took me a while to actually find myself to writing, to finding a way to put my different abuses into books. I didn't want to write them verbatim. I knew that I was never going to write a memoir. And I wanted to use the lens of fiction to share part of my story, but do it in a way that I could distance and protect myself while also giving 100% authenticity to the feelings and the experiences And in that way, I was hoping that it could be a little bit more universal while self-protecting in that way. So that's how I came to writing. It took me a while to get into the place where I even could admit to myself that I wanted to write, let alone wanted to try it on as a career. But I finally got there, especially with young adult literature, going for my master's in that. And I think that it's the perfect age through which I could explore that trauma, because things really came to a head for me when I was in high school. And it's such a pivotal time in somebody's life.
Sure.
You know, especially for those who they're just trying to find out their place in the world. And then they have this extra baggage of this trauma. They're trying to figure out where they are in their own bodies, in their own heads, let alone their own lives. So I think it's just really rich for exploring, you know, the emotional territory.
Yeah. And I think that when it comes to us, especially as little girls, I mean, high school, I still consider us to be small girls. In high school, and we think we know it all, and we think we've got our shit together, and we think, you know, we're the bee's knees. Of course we do. And I never was able to process anything that happened to me until fairly recently. And a lot of what I did, though, as growing up and going through these things, is I have boxes and boxes of journals. And in fact, I was just doing another episode right before this one, and I was talking about the fact that afterwards, talking about the fact that I should probably burn these things. Like, I've had them for so long, and they keep going with me. And I'm like, I don't want to open them. I'm never going to read them. I don't want to look. I don't even want to go back into that spot, even though I need to in some places. I don't think I would be able to read what I wrote. Like I almost feel like it would be so devastating and triggering for other things. But I like the way that you explained how you crafted this and protected yourself during this process of writing the books to not only help yourself, but to also help others. Because I know, I mean, I was an avid reader. I still am. And I mean, I just devoured YA. You know, I mean, and it's certainly gotten way better than when I was in high school, because that was a very, very long time ago. But man, it takes a lot of guts to do that. And I applaud you for doing it, because we need our little people to be better in our world and in our society, and not feel scared to talk about things that happen to them, and not suppress them, and not hide them, and feel okay in despair, and feel okay in darkness, and know that there are others that are out there that share the same thing. So absolutely. Yeah, so I'm just stoked that you that you jumped in on the YA side of things too. When did you start writing?
I think I started writing when I was younger. I wrote a couple of stories, and I just thought, this is no good. You know? This is terrible. And I for so long never allowed myself to just be bad at things. You know, a lot of my trauma instilled in me this sense of perfectionism, that I had to be the good girl, that I had to be the perfect girl. And so how could I be bad at something? You know, if I were bad at something, that would make me inherently bad. And I already felt so bad in so many ways because of what had happened to me, that there was no space in my life or my body to even allow myself the grace to you know, sort of like try and fail at something. So it took me a very long time. I was well into, gosh, I think it was well in my 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe around 30, 31, when I finally just decided, this is silly. This is just something I'm interested in. But of course, I couldn't admit to myself what I really wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't even know at that point that I was going to tell these stories. And so I wrote this middle grade, which is, you know, ages 8 to 12, middle grade ghost story about a boy who moves into a haunted house. It was very generic, but you know, it was the impetus to try something on for size, to try out my own voice. And it's what I used to get into grad school. And in doing so, I thought, this is pretty cool, this writing thing. You know, I'm not terrible at it. And I was just at that place in my life where I thought, I've been living in fear for so long of, you know, not only past trauma and events that had been resurfacing, but also, you know, I'm afraid of myself and my own capabilities, but I'm the only one standing in my way now. It used to be someone else. It used to be these events, and now it's just me. So what can I do with this?
Yeah, what can I do to get out of my own way? I struggle with this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, it was, saying, okay, well, I'm going to go to school. Then for some reason it lifted the idea off that I had to be perfect, because I'm going to school for it. I'm going to learn how to do this.
Sure,
I don't have to be good at it right away.
Yeah.
And I've always been very good at school. So, when I went to school, in one of my first classes was about giving voice to underrepresented audiences. And it was about writing young adult. It blew my mind what you could do with young adult literature. I just had no idea what you could put in the pages. And all of a sudden this ghost story was like, whatever.
Yeah. Ghost your ghost story.
Yeah. And that's when I started to develop my first book after the Ink Dries. I started to develop Erica's story. I was taking a lot of my shame and trauma from events that had happened to me in high school when I had been raped or when I had been assaulted. And, but I had drank too much. So clearly it was
my fault,
was the narrative I was telling myself.
Of course.
When really I was just using alcohol to cope with my past. And so I used these real strong emotions in my own life to craft this story about, well, what would happen if this girl was in high school? What would happen if she wakes up and she finds that she's been stripped and she finds that she's been written on? What if the assault that I had experienced was manifested in a slightly different way? What could I add to the conversation about assaults, about rape culture, about, just inherent misogyny that's been, so ingrained in our society? I had a lot of, the way that I found my way into that book was, how can I add to this conversation? How can I do something in a slightly different way? What if I blur the lines between, some people think she's been assaulted and some people say it's a prank. So, they really just kind of opened up the door for me to be able to explore my own trauma, because this was Erica's story. I kept saying, this was Erica's story.
Right. This isn't Cassie's. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're like, I mean,
writing a chapter and just ugly sobbing.
Oh God, yeah.
I'm like, I feel you, Erica. I love you and I created you, but I feel you, girl.
Oh gosh.
So it was really just like the stepping stone that I needed to be able to tell the story that I really wanted to tell, which is much closer to my heart, which is my second novel, and that's the Secrets We Keep. And that one is about child molestation, with the protagonist's father molesting her. And really, her whole journey is coming to terms with the fact that she's even been abused, let alone that it happened to somebody that she cares about too.
Yeah.
And so in that book, I was able to get closer to the truth and to explore, in a small town, just like where I grew up in, and what that sort of betrayal felt like when somebody close to you has done this. And, of course, there's a lot that I changed. I wanted to protect, people around me. I wanted to protect my family.
Sure, of course.
The mom in that story is so different than my mom. My mom is lovely, but you would never know it reading that story.
That's fair. Okay, Mom, we love you.
We love you, Mom. And it was just the book of my heart. It was the book that I needed to tell. And so I really, haven't really looked back ever since I started that. And even my third book that I'm working on now, I just thought, okay, this was such a journey, emotionally, physically, because I ended up developing this severe allergic reaction disease while I was writing my second book. I just thought, my body is telling me I need a break from these topics. My body is telling me that I am literally reliving these things in order to write about them. Yeah. So with my third book, I thought I'm going to do something completely different. It's going to be a psychological thriller, which I've always been very interested in, especially from a craft standpoint. How do you craft so many reveals and twists and interesting in things? And I wrote this whole book, and it was just such a dud.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I just thought, what did I write? And how come this has zero heart? And I feel like my other books have a lot of heart.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was holding myself back from once again writing a Me Too story. And as soon as I just admitted it to myself, admitted what I wanted the backstory to be, then the whole story just opened up. And I've been going back and rewriting, entire sections of it and inserting all of these flashbacks that tell the story of these two best friends in Hollywood, where one has committed suicide and the other feels responsible.
Well, and I can identify with that, not just in writing, but also just doing this show, doing something like this, which started as just, I love podcasts. And I was like, well, I've got stuff to talk about. I was thoughtful about my intention, but I didn't have any game plan for it actually turning into what it's turned into, not just for me, but for listeners and my sweetie and, so on and so forth. But if I tried to do, because I tried to do another podcast prior, and it was a sex podcast, like, great. How many fucking sex podcasts do we need on this planet, right? I could talk about it because I loved doing it. So, but it was such a good learning experience for me to attempt at that, my ghost story, if you will, and just epically. I was good at it, but it just wasn't me. It wasn't my soul food. It wasn't a big reveal. It was just like kind of talking dirty all the time. It just wasn't what I wanted to represent myself as, that's for sure. And so then when this kind of came into my world, it has been so incredibly cathartic to have these conversations with people, because for starters, you are not alone in this world, right? Trauma and assault and rape is a very, very scary place to have been. And unfortunately, we both have experienced this. And it's so complicated and it's so nuanced. And there's resentment and anger and shame. It's just like the list goes on and on. But by doing this, I feel like, at least from my experiences, I might be able to touch one person or help somebody through something. And by proxy, you doing the same thing by being here today, because it's one of the most amazing things that I've done. But it took me getting in the groove and also being okay with being incredibly honest and incredibly vulnerable and incredibly raw. And that's scary. It's really scary to do. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? Because when you Google it, it is like what I Google for my stuff. You're like, oh, why did I do that? Why did I Google it? And why did I click on an image? Like, don't do that. Can you give a little bit of what that is? And do you think that your illness came from having basically starting to face the music of what happened to you in your writing? Is that what you think maybe like triggered it? Or how does it, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. But first, I want to say, don't throw away your writing. You were talking about throwing away your journals. And I would advise you, even if you're not going to keep it, don't throw it away yet. You said you're working on a book. And you never know.
Okay.
You're going to need a little piece of it. So hold on to it and then burn it after you.
Okay, that's fair. Or I'll just send them to you and you can store them for me.
There you go. But then feel free to burn them after.
Okay, good.
To the ground. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll promise that.
Okay. And then Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, I thought of it for a long time as an autoimmune disease. And I was corrected recently. It's technically an allergic reaction disease, but it manifests similarly as an autoimmune disease in that your body is turning on itself. So for me, it's the mast cells, which are your first line of defense against any sort of allergies or illness. They misfire. You have, millions of mast cells in your body, and they each can release over 200 different chemicals. And these are chemical messengers telling your body, we just got stung by a bee. We just, twisted our ankle, send inflammation here. so that your body can heal and, take the proper next steps. For mine misfire, and they release a bunch of these chemicals when there's no emergency. So how this came about, because it's a very complicated disease, and it took me a very long time to even realize that this is what I had, let alone seek treatment for it. I was not very kind to my body. I think that's also probably a hallmark of anybody who's gone through trauma.
Ding, ding.
You don't think that you deserve, this kindness and this self-love. And so what has been done to your body, is abuse, and you continue the pattern. You continue to abuse it through any sort of addiction or heavy drinking or eating disordered behavior or all of these things. And unfortunately, that was a lot of my undergrad, just abusing my body because I couldn't come around to the fact that I deserve love. And so for years and years and years and years, I had just done, just really unkind things to my body. And then I had all of these shoulds in my head. You should do this, you should do that. And one of them was you should live your life to the fullest. Even though I'm such a homebody, I was like forcing myself to go out and do all of these things. And, sometimes that's a wonderful part of life. And sometimes it's just the opposite of what you need. And what I really needed to do, especially as this trauma was trying to break through, was to just sit quiet with myself, which was the scariest thing. And the thing that I absolutely didn't
Seriously.
want to do. So what should I do instead? I should go hiking in the Himalayas for 3 weeks. And, I should be, hiking at 15,000 feet with heavy packs and severe temperature swings. And let's add in accidentally eating some foods that I'm allergic to while I'm out there. And so, I did this trip. It was a trek in, trek back out. You don't have the option of not trekking back out once you've trekked in. So, my body just kind of started to fall apart on this trip, especially after I realized that all the foods I had been eating had wheat in them, which I'm very allergic to. And
oh my God,
I came home. I came home and my body was just falling apart. It was asking for me to just slow down.
Yeah.
I knew I had a reaction to caffeine. I was still chugging it. I was trying to get my first book out the door to my agent. The pressure, she was not putting pressure on me. I was putting pressure on me.
Of course.
Once again,
that's what we do.
Girl who delivers, right?
Yep.
And I was not taking care of my body even after I got home from this trip. And I decided, what did my body need? It needed an Orange Theory class. So I was in the middle of doing this intense workout. So it just sounds so preposterous even when I say it.
It's so preposterous.
This girl's just punishing herself.
Totally. And I'm a total homebody too. So I'm like, all of this sounds terrible for so many reasons.
Yeah. So I was in the middle of this very intense exercise class and I was on the treadmill running. I think that's the story of my life, running. And it was like a switch flipped. Something happened and I was immediately just feeling not good. I was so nauseous, and that nausea continued for 9 months. And over the course of that, it didn't matter what I ate, what I drank. I could put water in my body and I'd just be violently nauseous. Yeah. And what I didn't realize was my mast cells had activated in my gastrointestinal tract and they were misfiring. And so over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, I started developing all of these food allergies. And at first it was things like, protein powder and even green tea. I just started losing all of these foods, just having these violent allergic reactions.
Crazy.
To the point where I remember eating some boiled cassava, which is a root, with some boiled chicken and some green beans. And I was still reacting. It got to the point where I was down to eating just ground beef with lard poured over it and salt, because that was the least reactive of all the foods that I could put into my body. And that went on for about a month. And I had to, just eat this while I was trying to figure out what was going on.
Wow.
Why my body was reacting so hugely. And finally, it must have just been, giving my body a little bit of time to calm down. I was able to very slowly add in some other foods while, it dawned on me, I think this is a condition that I have. And I was finally able to get some help. I found a great mast cell specialist right down in Boston, close by, and a local primary care physician. And I really credit my mast cell specialist with stabilizing my body so that I was no longer, on the verge of starvation. And then I really credit my PCP with saying, there are so many people I see with this condition, or out of all of the people I see with this condition, because it's actually somewhat rare. A lot of them have toxicity buildup. And, it was, I had some gut infections that I had to deal with. I had lived in moldy buildings, and my body doesn't process toxins like normal bodies do. So it was a several year process to identify what I had going on, how I was going to detox from all of these, pretty intense toxins without upsetting my mast cells further. While I tried to write these 2 books and get them into the world. So it was, the hardest time in my life. I thought that the trauma that I went through was the hardest, but facing down the trauma while your body is failing, that was the hardest.
It is very, very hard to do. Very.
Where, I'm writing my second book, and my husband is saying, "Are you sure you want to be doing this?
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to be doing this?" He sees the physical toll that it's taking on me. And I said, I have to. The only way is through. I can't do this any other way.
The only way out is through. I love that line. Yep.
And yes, absolutely. I knew that I had to get through this book, or it was going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Not only this protagonist, Emma, who I suddenly, understood intimately and really cared about, but my own younger self. While I was writing that book, I had a picture of my younger self on my bulletin board, so I can look at her and I could remember what it was like to be her. And I could send love to this past version that, had been so self-sabotaging. And I could remember what it was like to feel, that young and vulnerable. So that really helped, but it was tremendously difficult going to that place, but I don't think I could have done it any other way.
And I completely identify with the fact we're cut from the same cloth in a lot of different ways, unfortunately and fortunately. But I totally don't. My body is just, it's like so not a wonderland. Like it is, I'm in pain 24 hours a day. I don't eat very much at all. And when I do, I'm sick. The smell of food makes me nauseous, I call it pain puking because I throw up so much. I can't keep weight on. I'm down 11 pounds right now than I should be. And I weighed myself this morning and I was like, God damn it. And then my sweetie's like, well, honey, you haven't eaten since Tuesday. I'm like, I know, and I didn't even really eat on Tuesday either. And then I don't remember. And you're talking about self-sabotage. So much of that, this is not an intentional decision that I'm not going to eat. It's like, if I do, I feel horrible. And then when I don't, I feel horrible. So it's like, what the hell do I do? He's tired of cleaning up puke. I can tell you that much. And I'm tired of doing it, And so and I've got massive amounts of infections in my gut. I've got Lyme disease. I've got H. pylori. I've got co-infections with all this other stuff. I've got babesia. You just name them. And I'm like, oh my God, I told everybody we were missing something, that I don't just have CRPS. I have something else going on. And it took such a toll to even get to this place, to get diagnosed and to get these things. So now I can actually start going after all of them. But it is arduous, and it is daunting, and it is scary, and it is sad. And I know that a lot of my stomach upset and a lot of my pain flares when I'm doing some deep work on trauma, getting through some trauma stuff. You know, I'm like, ooh, gosh, wow, my pain level just super spiked. Guess what I'm doing? I'm talking about what happened to me when I was 9 years old or whatever, you know? And so being able to be connected with yourself well enough to be able to know that that's what's happening and try to like get out of your own way, like you said, because self-sabotage is totally real. You don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it when you're so young, because it feels like your innocence is completely taken away from you, which it is. And then you're like, well, now I'm like an adult and I'm 9 or I'm 13 or I'm 18 or I'm 22 or I'm 30. You know, it's like, wow, how many times does that have to repeat itself in my world of some place around there where I'm ever going to get healthy? Am I ever going to be healthy? And did you feel the same way? Like, this is horrible. Like, am I ever going to be who I wanted to be? Because for me, that was something that I've been struggling with in the trauma journey, going, all of my hopes and dreams of the things that I wanted to do are not working. Not happening. But then as soon as I started making some pretty bold changes in regards to dealing and processing with some of this trauma and assault and stuff, it's pretty remarkable what's happening in my life, and doors are opening and windows are opening and birds are singing, and I just need to start eating.
Yeah. That's it. Yep. Preach.
Yep. And it's good because now and this is like what I said in the beginning too, is we're here for each other. I'm here for you. You're here for me right now. We're here for people that are listening. And for anybody that's listening to this story that needs to reach out to either of us, please do. I'll make sure that we've got her contact information or her social and all of her stuff in show notes and on social media and stuff as well. But I mean, I'm offering you up. Hi. Please reach out to Cassie. Yeah. No, but yeah, that's why we're here, because if there's something that you want to talk about, or not necessarily be on the show, but you just need an ear. So many of you are reaching out to me on Instagram and social media, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have dialogue with you guys as well. So it's pretty neat what you've been able to accomplish and what you've been doing to help yourself and to help others. But I'm so proud of you for protecting yourself, because that's really, really hard to do too.
Absolutely. Well, right back at you.
Yeah.
You know the actions that you need to take, but you know that the one that you need to take first and foremost is to face that head on.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does change our world. Maybe our lives are never going to be exactly what we thought they would, or quote should be.
Sure. But, nothing is what I thought it would be right now in my life. Nothing. Not one thing. So
but it's amazing the beauty that is around you that you just can't see when you're in it.
Totally.
When your body is still stuck back in its trauma cycles. And once you start to really face the depths of this happened to me, and in exact measure, this is exactly what happened to me. I really do think that was the only way that I could get to the other side. I still deal with my condition, but I can tell you right now, I'm not eating ground beef and lard over the top of it.
The lard, like, I'm not even kidding with my food. When you said lard, I'm all, I think I'm going to throw up on my keyboard and my microphone right now. I was like, oh God. And my stomach's been all jacked today anyway. So I'm like, oh, great.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so funny that you brought up ground beef too, because I hadn't eaten, I didn't eat meat at all for a very long time. And then I specifically I still don't eat pork and what have you. But all of a sudden, it was like, it's probably like 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, we were like driving by In-N-Out Burger or whatever. And I'm like, I'm craving beef. Like, that is so weird. And so we started to slowly implement like good, healthy, happy cow meat, not like gross meat. And it is unbelievable. It's literally all I want to eat. And it's the only thing that my stomach can stomach. So I'm like, just sitting here shaking my head going, come on. I'm so glad I'm not doing lard though. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad that you got through all of this stuff. and that you're managing, the mast cell activation syndrome. I mean, all these syndromes, they sound so fake. Like I've got chronic regional pain syndrome. Pfft, totally sounds made up. I can guarantee it's not,
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, and every single guest that's on here has had some random weird something or other that we're like, oh God, I don't know if I should Google that, but I do anyway, because we've got to. But you had said something in our meet and greet that stood very close to my heart, where you had said, I had to write this out of my body. And I've used the words, I identify a lot with this because that's what's happening here with me and you today, apparently. But wow, because it is so incredibly powerful. Like I opened up the episode with the power of the written word and getting the stuff out. And like I said, you don't have to be a great writer. You don't even have to want to be a writer. Just go grab a beautiful journal and start doing something, even if it's a little poem, even if it's one sentence, like just start it. And it's been very, very powerful for me. And I am writing some of this out for sure. And it is very, very, very challenging to do, though, when it comes to like,
absolutely. Well, part of me wonders if I could have avoided having this condition, period.
Yep.
Had I been able to process all of this, all this gunk that's just been harboring in the shadows of my body for so long.
So long. Yeah.
And, it's not a question to cast blame on myself or anything like that, or to further punish myself, because I'm hopefully past that stage in my life. At least I think so. But it's really just about recognizing the power of, the power that was stripped from you, and then the power that you have now in writing it down and acknowledging it. And like I said, nobody was there for that little girl. Nobody was validating her experiences.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people who loved me, but they didn't know.
Sure, of course. I was the same way. Yeah. Lives
and breeds in secrecy.
Yeah.
So that, that little girl, she needed unconditional love and support and validation. And it's really taken me many years to get to this place, but now I can look at her with empathy and love and understanding. And when I'm writing this stuff, I'm writing it for her too, because she didn't have a voice, and she didn't have that support. But I think in order to even start to understand that you need to write it down, there's a couple steps. I had no idea that my generalized anxiety disorder, that the beginnings of an eating disorder in high school, I had no idea that it was related to my abuse as a child. Like how would we? We wouldn't think that. We blame ourselves and we think this was me in the wrong spot at the wrong time. You're 9. What the hell? There's something inherently wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because somebody chose you, and there must be something wrong with you if they want to do these vile things to you. What does that say about you as a person?
Sure.
So you must be inherently flawed. And so it really took, a counselor in high school who had recognized that I had been abused, even if I wasn't really talking about it or admitting it to myself. I was showing all the classical signs of this, having panic attacks in class and things like that. She handed me a book about abuse, and it was the first time that the abuse and the body had really been like connected. I spent so much time in my head with my anxiety and like OCD tendencies and everything, that I started to be like, oh yeah, this happened to my body. This is all tied together. And it still took me so long to connect the two, to connect, what was happening in my mind and my life with what would happen with my body, with this trauma. And so, I think the first step is to recognize that I didn't even see it. I didn't even see that. Yeah. That was the first part. And then, yeah, I feel like this had been stuck in my body for so long. And especially when you are continuously punishing your body, for your perceived shortcomings or whatever happened to you, you're going to stay stuck. And it's all, your body doesn't trust you to be able to let this stuff out until you finally say, okay, I'm ready to just accept you. I'm ready to start trying to love you. It's really hard to break that cycle. It's not like it happens instantaneously. And so, and then finally you just have to say, okay, well, maybe I can play with that idea. And then slowly you just like bridge the gap between, your mind and your body. And then at some point I feel like you can just embrace it. You can embrace your whole self, all the parts, and it's really weird because sometimes even today, I'll feel a little fragmented, and I have to stop and I have to physically speak out loud to that part of my body that's feeling like it's pushed away or distanced from me, to kind of like pull it back together.
This is such a good way of putting it, because, and I'm learning a lot from you on this episode today, just like learning from you, but also learning a little bit more about myself, which is always like, what? How did I not know that about me either? And the separation and the self-sabotage stuff, like I know what I was doing. I was always super rebellious. I was always running. Like you said, you were a runner. I'm running on a treadmill. I'm running away from my problems. I'm running away from my life. I don't want to look myself in the mirror. I don't want to be honest with people that should know what happened to me, that should have been protecting me, that shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? And then, all of a sudden you're 46. What just happened here? Why now is what's happening? Isn't it? I'm just now starting to finally fall in love with myself. It's taking that long. And it's very sad, but hey, I'm glad that we're at this part where we can actually feel like a human being that wasn't like totally left out in the dark for dead. It's kind of how that feels, that anxiety, that depression, the need to want to drink or do drugs or whatever it is, to escape, to run away from whatever it is that you're feeling about what happened to you, and being able to accept that it's okay that this shit happened to us. And it also happened, you said it eloquently in the beginning about how it's pretty hard pressed to find a woman on a college campus that hasn't been raped and pillaged and assaulted. Like, that is sad. The fact that I have no problem finding guests for this show about this topic is mind-boggling. If anything, it's made my mind just explode more and make me want to help others far more than I ever thought I would ever want to. So I am so proud of you and what you've done and what you've accomplished and how far you've come from everything that you've been through in the process, and then publishing these 2 epic books. When's your 3rd book going to come out, by the way?
I'm still working on it, so we haven't gone out to sell it yet. But
okay, well, I don't care for that answer. And I know we're getting short on time here, and I want to honor our time together. This has been absolutely wonderful. I mean, even though these are yucky topics that we talk about, it's so good for us to show that we can laugh through them, we can smile from them, we can learn through them, we can cry through them, and we can still be stronger, better, amazing women, men on this planet, And so thank you for sharing your story with us today and being vulnerable and real. And thanks for helping the YA people too, because YA is not just for young adults, by the way, either. Okay. Like, I like YA novels. Like, I like them because a lot of what they do is they take me to a place that either I missed out on because I had to adult so freaking young, and or it brings back some memory of something that I need to either address or something that was a really positive part of my childhood and my young adult years, which gets lost when you've been in such dark places. You forget, like, oh my God, I really did not have that bad of a childhood or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, my parents were, my stepdad and my mother are amazing. My dad and my stepmom's a whole other different conversation. But, it's like, that's for another show. And, but it is pretty amazing what we can get through and what we can do with grit and grace. And you're doing it just perfectly. So there.
Yeah. And you're showing up every single podcast and doing this. It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
You are continuing the vulnerability over and over and over and
over and over. Yeah.
I hope that that's part of your healing journey too.
It is. It absolutely is. I didn't know it was going to be. Okay. We can find you online at Cassie Gustafson. CassieGustafson.com is CassieGustafson.com. She's also Cassie Gusty on Insta. You're Cassie Gusty1 on TikTok. You're on TikTok. Okay, I'll forgive you. And her
Not really.
Not really. I pretend I'm on TikTok loosely.
I have to pretend. The kids are doing it these days.
The kids. I know. Damn kids everywhere. And your books, The Secrets We Keep, and After the Ink Dries. I will put all of this in show notes and an Instagram, of course, email marketing, all of the stuff. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with before we hit the dusty trail?
I just want to say thank you, and I admire you for doing this, for continuing to show up for people over and over and over and over again and be vulnerable every single time. It's just so admirable.
Thank you. It is definitely challenging, but slap on a little lipstick and you just do the thing.
That's the attitude.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate it. It's been nice to get to know you a little bit further as well. And I'm looking forward to the third book. So let's cross our fingers that it's not a psychological twister with ghosts all over the place. All right, guys? Thanks again, Cassie. It's been a pleasure. You are exclusively invited to share this Write the Damn Trauma Out of Your Bod VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side and Cassie's side. Do you know someone that needs to hear this conversation today? Did you need to hear it? Because if so, listen up, open your ears, forward the episode, do whatever you need to do. If you are struggling and you've got challenges processing trauma, please reach out to us. Welcome to the Pain Game Podcast. That's what we're here for. Let's connect and hear your stories of strength and grit. I'm here to provide you with as safe of a place as I possibly can to share your stories, whether it's live on the podcast or just want to talk to me. I'm here for you. Please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.